All right, morning, comrades, and welcome to the second episode of Hot Shots. Like last time, I'm using this space and format to talk about whatever perked my interest this week, and rather than sharing Twitter screenshots throughout my digital presence without commentary, I actually figured talking about some of the stuff would be a little bit more helpful in trying to make sense of all the fucking madness that's going outside in the world. Again, the usual disclaimers, like none of this is edited. It's a one take, one shot type of thing, only because I'm not really that good at editing or using any of this technology. So, again, another disclaimer is, this is adult content. I will be swearing, and if swearing offends you, this might be a good time to tune out. Anyway, before I start, I wanted to say thank you to everyone that turned into the first show last week, and more importantly, even gave feedback. And I have to single out a few people here, especially Dorian, Eric, and Simone, who all independently from one of another said the same thing. Turn up the damn recording volume, Stephen. I have, and I hope this is a little clearer and a little louder than last time. And yes, I will try not to mumble as much as I usually do. So here goes that. Now, initially, I was going to focus on like two topics this week. One being COVID-19 once again, and specifically schools and whatever our respective governments are up to. And the second topic was going to be like NFTs, cryptos, and whatever other doublespeak those common are up to. But something kind of just floated into my inbox like a few hours ago that deserves a little attention. A former senior officer in Spain's national police has said that the 2017 terror attacks in Barcelona and Cambrils were organized by the country's secret service in a bid to destabilize Catalonia before the independence referendum there. That was the headline that just rolled in, and I literally had to sit down and go, wait, what? Let me read that again. And yes, some of you might remember the horrendous terrorist attacks that, well, I guess we have to put them in parentheses now, attacks on civilians in Barcelona in 2017, where 17 people died, and that includes, well, actually, I don't know if it includes the 5 people that were then subsequently shot by the police, but 17 people were killed that day. Horrible, insane, and it literally took, what, 10 minutes or maybe a day for official sources to say, yes, this was a jihadist uh, terrorist attack on the so-called freedom of the West. As it now turns out, this person, a very, well, as far as the sources go anyway, a person that was relatively high up in Spain's national police, has said, no, you know what, actually, we orchestrated that, and we did that on purpose. We wanted to destabilize the Catalonian independence movement. And fuck. Again, like I had to take a breather when that sort of came in like an hour or so ago, well, actually like 3 or 4 hours ago, and go, okay, cool. So now we have a former government official admitting to false flag terrorist operations here in Europe that killed people, and they blamed the jihadist boogeyman. I mean, that's literally the same as, well, not almost, well, it's almost the same. But imagine like Bush rolling into a press conference holding Cheney's hand and going, yeah, fuck you guys, we did 9/11, and then walking out again. That's pretty much what's going on here, which is a little insane. Insane in the sense of, okay, so I guess all these conspiracy theory nut dudes really did have a point. And I still really can't really figure out like what to make of all of this. There's, it feels like over the last 10 years, over the last 15 years, like we're slowly getting to the point of having to realize that, yeah, we can't really trust any of these fuckers at all. And we're getting to a point where a lot of the people responsible or involved in these events, let's call them that, tragic events, feel comfortable enough to come forward and say, yeah, you know what, actually, no, we did this, and yeah, sorry about that, and let's just move on. It's fucking bewildering. And yeah, again, like I'm still trying to figure out what the timing means, what the content means, and like what actually is going to be the consequence of this information. I doubt there will be any. as per usual. Whenever the government sort of admits to going, yeah, we are the bad guys, nothing really does happen. And I seriously doubt that this thing is going to remain in anybody's news cycle for longer than 5 seconds. But I think it's pretty important to keep an eye out on this one, and I'll certainly try and see what's going on. So I might have to circle back onto this story next week. But yeah, that kind of just rolled in, and then I thought it was noteworthy just to have a quick chat about that one. So that's because it's mind-boggling. It literally just makes my mind go, wait, really? Okay. Anyway, oh yeah, so and if you hear any like shuffling of papers here in the background, that's me because I've actually printed out a bunch of these screenshots that I would usually share because I didn't want to use my phone, and I tried that last week and it just didn't work. So if you hear papers in the background, that's what that is. Okay, so initial point: Rona and fucking schools and governments. Again, another disclaimer. Some of you may know I'm a parent, so this whole discussion has that extra layer, or extra level to it. But for the sake of this conversation, or sake of this essay, I'm going to try and keep my personal life out of this one, which it's not always easy, but it's there, and I just need you to know that because transparency is a good thing. So yeah, that's where we're at. So earlier this week, my Twitter timeline was filled with the news of schools having to reopen in the U.S. and the total dire realities of public schooling in the U.S. being what they are, and with this Omicron wave ripping through Western Europe now, well, all of Europe, and it's hitting the U.S. A lot of people weren't happy or felt safe with their kids having to return to school. And again, from a personal point of view, with schools having opened here like a week and a half ago, I certainly wasn't stoked, and that's irrespective of the fact that the majority of my kids' school is vaccinated. Like, it just it doesn't feel good. So when I read a lot of the commentary online of people saying, "Hey, this doesn't feel right. Like it doesn't really feel safe to send my kids into school." My first reaction was, "Yeah, well, of course it's not, man. We all know this. After 2 years, or almost our third year of this pandemic, we're sitting there going, yeah, well, of course it can't be fucking safe, and it's not. We all know that." What the important, well, not the important, but the noteworthy reaction was from the side of let's call them the authorities, school boards, to mayors, all the way up to the White House, is what I wanted to talk about today. All right, so fact is, school's open. Parents are like, well, fuck this. We shouldn't be doing this. A lot of the teacher unions were like, well, you know what? We're not safe either. So we should really talk about maybe doing homeschooling again, getting rid of the being at school presence teaching system, and explore other options. And of course, that makes total sense. Like, we have the technology, and even if we don't, we can provide it. And it took, what, 10 seconds? It felt like 10 seconds, maybe like half an hour, for every government official at every level literally to go, hell no. Of course it's safe to send your kids to school. I don't know what all the fuss is about. And it, within a day, turned into this narrative of governments going, we're not at fault here. Everything is safe. You guys need to do this. Fuck you. That's it. Like, we don't give a shit about your health or anybody, your kids' health or your teachers' health. Like, this is just what you need to do. And wow. Again, like, it just made me stop in my tracks, because we're having, the same conversation, the same narrative is happening here, be it in the UK or be it in Germany, and I'm sure it's the same for the rest of Europe, where we have these governments, right? We have this infrastructure that we work for and pay for with our taxes, that exists to provide the infrastructure for our society to make us safer, right? To protect us from harm. That's essentially the reason why we have these governments, in theory. Obviously not in practice, but in theory. They're not doing that. They're not doing that even in the slightest. And this responds to concern from parents, from teachers, from unions, from healthcare officials going, hey, you know what? Opening schools isn't necessarily really safe, or maybe we should just not do this. was staggering. Staggering in the sense that it's becoming so clear that these governments, and it doesn't matter if it's the U.S. government or the government here, um, don't give a shit. They truly don't, and they are doing everything that they can to change the narrative away from accepting responsibility of their failings in regards to dealing with this pandemic, and shifting it to you and shifting it to me. Literally saying, oh shit, well, if you caught COVID, sorry, I guess you weren't paying attention or you weren't being safe enough. Which is not the case. This, again, like I think I've written about this last week, this is a systemic failure. It's not an individual failure at all. If, at this point, especially with the Omicron variant, that's apparently very, very infectious, going around. If you catch us, I think, well, yeah, it's like it doesn't matter how hard you isolate, and let's face it, if you are a working person, like all of us mostly are, you can't isolate. You have to go to work because well, you got bills to pay, like everybody else does. And I just find it so wild that we're nowhere near at the point of this pandemic being beaten or ending this viral infection. And we're still discussing having to send people to work, having to send people to school, having to maintain some sort of sense of normality in this wage slavery system that we sort of live in, irrespective of the fact that hundreds and thousands of people have died and will continue to die. All that says, and all that proves, is the realization that our governments don't do the job that we need them to. Now, I've been sort of rapping about this for a long, long time because that's always been clear to me. But I think for everyone involved, like this should just be like the last straw. And after 3 years of this continuous state of stress, I've had enough. I've had enough of this bullshit. I just really have gotten to the end of my, let's call it patience, and accepting my self-responsibility in terms of isolating and protecting myself and protecting my kid and protecting the people around me, when the powers that be are just shitting on it. They're like, no, fuck it, man. You got to go to work. You have to go. You have to send your kids to school. And the wild thing is, like, the solution to all this is so simple. Again, I've mentioned this a number of times, but ending a pandemic like this within our system requires for everybody to stay the fuck at home for a couple of months, isolate the fuck out of there, and and then the government's job will be to say, okay, cool, like if this is what we need to do, everybody's going to get paid, everyone's going to have their needs and just taken care of. We are going to pay you. Yes, you are still going to get fed. We're not going to turn your heating off in winter or your air conditioning in the summer if you live in the US. And we'll write this out for a couple of months' time. Now, obviously, the problem with that is that if you do that, and I mean, when I say pay everyone, I mean everyone, like not just people like myself who can stay at home and work from home, but I'm talking from everyone who works in, from the Amazon warehouse to a healthcare worker. It's just everyone. That would allow for our kids to stay at home and not have to go to school. And that's you get to this sort of point where you go, okay, so are schools literally places for placing our kids so we can go to work, or are they actually places to get taught and be educated? Maybe a different discussion at a later point, but you see what I'm getting at. The fact remains, if we were all paid to stay the fuck at home and just try and survive this pandemic, after about 2 or 3 months, I would wager a large amount of people would go, well, shit, why should I go back to this really stressful existence of, having to work 10 to 15 hours a day, not getting enough cash for it, me not seeing my family, me not seeing my kids, and everybody stressing the fuck out, right? So that's, again, the reason, well, one of the reasons why our governments, and again, it doesn't matter where they are, aren't doing what they have to do, because if we stop going to work and we're all getting money and we all realize that money is literally just an idea and not something factual, this whole shit show will come to a stop. And as desirable as that is, the people who make all the money during this pandemic and even before the pandemic pay our governments. They're the smart ones in that sense. They open up one hand and take our tax money, and on the other hand, they take the money from the big corporations that don't pay taxes and tell these guys, and well, not just guys, but people, what to do. It's oof. Again, it's like you get lost in this weird train of thought where you look at one very sort of like microcosmic like thing, like, oh, schools are opening, governments are telling you to go send your kids to school even though it's not safe, and then you sort of 5 minutes later get to this point, you're like, well, yeah, so the whole system is just built on bullshit, and it is. But I thought that yeah, that reality was worth noting, and long story short, shit, I hope if you do have kids that they're safe. I knock on wood, so far we've been lucky over at this end, but that's frankly at this point just a question of time, and I'm not fucking excited about it at all. But yeah, I guess the only consequence is to say, fuck the government and keep your kids and your loved ones safe, but poof, we all know how difficult that is. Ending that topic and trying to keep, well, let's try and talk about NFTs, let's talk about cryptos, let's talk about the blockchain, and let's talk about decentralization and all that bullshit. And I'm going to have a sip of water, so hold on for a minute. Oh, and if you're wondering why my voice is so fucking raspy, it's not because I'm sick, but it's just because this idiot decided it was a good idea to go for a drink with a few friends yesterday, and it wasn't. But hey, so it's that. All right, so crypto, NFTs, the blockchain, decentralization, fucking words that have been thrown around, especially in my little universe, for the last couple months. And there's been an ongoing discussion, especially about NFTs within sort of the art world, the pros and cons, and this, that, and the other. And sadly, well, not sadly enough, but the reality is a lot of my colleagues, be it people who work for corporations or independent artists like myself, are actually even being made to talk about this, as a lot of corporations are now jumping in on this frenzy. Let's call it a frenzy. And I figured, and again, like I've been asked by a bunch of friends even, and other colleagues, it's like, hey, do you want to get in on this? Like, what's your opinion on this? And I've refrained from talking about it because I truly didn't quite understand what was going on. And again, another disclaimer, I don't think I still fully understand every technical aspect behind that world. And truthfully, I don't intend to, because I think it's all bullshit. It's a fucking con. I'm going to sort of go into a little bit more detail about what a lot of this stuff actually means. And I got to say a huge thank you to a number of people who are involved in this world, from a programming aspect to a writing aspect to from an artist aspect that I've spoken to, who are much more involved in this and know more about this. And I've made a few notes here, and I'm going to try and explain it as best as I can and sort of go, well, okay, well, this is why I think it's bullshit, and this, that, and the other. So here goes that. Again, starting off, there's this weird perception that a lot of people involved in Marxist thought or communist action and this, that, and the other, like, are hugely anti-advancement, anti-technological futurism and this, that, and the other. It's completely, well, on the contrary, it's completely, myself and a lot of other people involved in this work are hugely pro-tech, futurism, advancement, automation, all of this, that, and the other. Our conversation starts not where these things could be going, but it always starts and ends with ownership and intent, like everything else in this world. Like, I am fully for like a full automated society if we, like you, me, everyone else on this fucking planet, are the owners of the machines automating everything. we let the capitalists keep ownership of automation as we did in the first and second industrial revolution, well, we're quite frankly like genuinely fucked. Because it means our jobs would be gone, our work would become relevant, and we'd still have to work to make money to live. If we own the machines and we distribute the profits as needs and be, then we're talking about a future that sort of takes a step in the right direction. But anyhow, again, like plenty of colleagues and friends are getting or are being forced by their employers to get into this discussion and work. So let's start with crypto. Right, so cryptocurrencies, as I understand it, based alone on their environmental impact, aren't futuristic, let alone progressive, and if anything, just improve the illogical belief in money as a concept. Granted, like even if you got into this pyramid scheme like early enough, and by that sort of I mean 10 years ago, you will probably have made silly amounts of, like in parentheses, money by now. But like any pyramid scheme, crypto depends on power being focused on a very few people, and just like money, just like money in the real world, and enough people investing and hoping to let their money work for them. Now that concept, let your money work for you, has always been a lie. Money, capital doesn't work. You do. And this train of thought is a really evil psychological trick that preys on on humans' greatest weakness, which is greed. And secondly, again, ownership. Like all fiat currencies, you do not own crypto. You own a promise, and a promise that can always, and has always, be broken. It's just, again, like open up a fucking history book and go through all fiat currency crashes and you go, oh, okay, cool, and this has happened with crypto as well. Add to that, the whole alt-right meets libertarian vibe inherent in crypto and crypto discussions, just hide the fact that with crypto there's far less safety valves attached in comparison to fiat currency, and even that lie of sort of independence and so-called decentralization is nothing again but a lie that preys on everyone's disdain with the apparent corruption of the fiat world. Again, I do believe that crypto is just nothing but a fucking con instigated by finance. That's just my take on it. Now we have to get to decentralization. Now, so decentralization. Oof, see, that was a tough one for me because that whole I had to do like a bunch of reading to actually understand what everyone is talking about. Because if you get involved in this conversation, it's one word you get through. Like every time you utter a sort of question or sort of go, this is just nonsense. Like you'll get a bunch of dudes, it's mostly dudes, throw that word, but decentralization, they throw it at you, and sort of that's meant to end any and all arguments. And I was like, wait, okay, well, I don't, and for a long time I was like, well, okay, cool, I don't actually have a counter argument because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I looked into it and pretty much spent all week reading into this and asking a bunch of questions, and was lucky enough to find a few people who are far fucking smarter than I am when it comes to this. And sort of I made a few notes about this whole decentralization argument and the actual reality of decentralization within blockchains and this, that, and the other. Now the question is, what does decentralization do for the average person? Like what benefits does it give the user over another system? And most importantly, and this is the crack point, does it work? Now the problem with most decentralized apps is that for the most part they're incapable of doing the basic functions that are easy for other apps to do. Right? So every action a user takes on the blockchain requires a signature, something I had to learn, which in turn requires a currency of some sort to operate. These small actions are by default invisible when using a centralized application. Right? So the processing is usually handled by like Amazon Web Services or something like that. And when a user clicks something, they are signing the transaction and approving it. Now to a regular person like you and me, or actually just me, there is no consideration of how many signatures you're actually making through the process of using a singular app, like Facebook or Instagram or whatever the fuck, TikTok. But every action, and on every blockchain I've used, you have to sign for every single action, right? And that's mental, right? So for example, if you buy a token on a decentralized exchange, you must sign something saying that your wallet can talk to the exchange. Once you've done that, you must deposit funds, another transaction, and then choose to action a trade, which is another transaction. If you want to alter the terms of trade, another transaction. You want to cancel it, another transaction. Oh, good. So you get to this point where you actually sold the token. That's another transaction to withdraw the tokens to your wallet. Now, this alone, like just that little example, like this alone should tell everybody why decentralization is not going to take on. It's super fucking slow, and it's working as intended, to be honest. Like when you choose to decentralize something, you remove the present layer, the very pleasant layers of centralization and standardization that reduce the friction of using the web. Um, Essentially, you're basically trusting digital signature services, as they're called, choosing to trust the blockchain, which means you have to approve everything you want to do. It adds a blockchain layer to a thing that a regular web could already do, but it's slower and basically much more annoying. Now, I can't express enough that this is intolerably clunky for people like myself and anti-ethical to efficiently doing anything. Like it requires a form of token to do everything. And while your actions on a regular website, like let's take Substack for example, they have costs. They're handled by the website service and not the end user. Now, the result is an oligarchical system that does a little bit of what the current web does, but it just in an awkward, ugly way. Yeah. Hope you're still following. It gets a little weird at this point. The comment chat from like crypto people is to point at all the things you can do on a blockchain, like such as playing games, investing cash, or buying a golf course. That has happened. The answer is that the existence of something does not mean it is good at doing the thing it is trying to do. Right? Let's say that again. Like the answer is that the existence of something does not mean it is good at doing the thing it's trying to do. Just because the blockchain can have games on it does not mean it is good at having games on it, or that we are a few technological breakthroughs from doing so. Let's forget the whole what's better on blockchain for a second and ask, like, wait, what's the same? Like, what product can you use on, or actually, let's go to it again. What's the same? Like, what product can you use on any blockchain that functions as well as it does on a regular old web? Nothing. Nothing is even as good. And then you have to start thinking about web service for a minute. Because don't all these crypto companies have websites? Shit, well, guess what, motherfucker? They do. And this is where it gets so wild, where this whole decentralization discourse sort of just opens up to the fallacy that it is. Right? So, for example, whether a blockchain is running on mobile or the web, a decentralized app like, say, for example, Autonomous Art or First Derivative needs to interact with the blockchain somehow in order to modify or render state, like the collectively produced work of art, the edit history of it, the NFT derivatives, etc. It's not really possible to do that from the client, though, since the blockchain can't live on your mobile device or in your desktop browser realistically. So the only alternative is to interact with the blockchain via a node that's running remotely on a server somewhere. All right, see where I'm getting at with this? So it's a server, but as we know, people don't want to run their own servers. As it happens, companies have already emerged that sell API access to an Ethereum node they run as a service, along with providing analytics, enhanced APIs they've built on top of the default Ethereum APIs, and access to historical transactions, which is essentially how the web works. At this point, there's basically two companies. All decentralized apps either use Infura or Alchemy in order to interact with the blockchain. In fact, when you connect a wallet like MetaMask, something I have, or try to work with, to a decentralized app, the decentralized app interacts with the blockchain via your wallet, MetaMask, and MetaMask is just making a call to Infura. So the whole decentralized ecosystem that we've been talking about for years is a network of computers that can only really be accessed by using a very much centralized website. All of this comes to a point that I honestly don't believe most people, including myself, give a single shit about whether or not they're using a decentralized network. I don't think about about apps or services in terms of centralization or decentralization, centralization or decentralization. And at best, I see only the value of perhaps not being under the thumb of 4 or 5 big corporations. And again, this ties into the entire sort of Marxist perspective of ownership and not this fancy word of decentralization. Well, actually, most people don't even give a shit about that, which, again, that's sort of more my and our job. So that's why I think so much of the crypto theory and blockchain adoption is so firmly attached to investment and wealth rather than any utopian futuristic discussion. Like if we remove the idea that tokens of varying fungibility can grow exponentially, what is the value proposition of anything on the blockchain? Anonymity? Absolutely fucking not. Speed? In a vacuum, maybe, but in a practical sense, in what you can actually do with that speed, no. Safety? Whatever, like literally lol. The only real idea left was the idea of personal liberty and ownership outside the legal systems, which honestly don't exist. That's just a sad truth behind all of this. And I'm finishing up on NFTs. I mean, give me a fucking break. Seriously, like, just buy the real art if you want to throw your access cash away. Or, like in my case, buy the fucking t-shirt. Like, not only are you putting money in my wallet, you get a t-shirt in exchange, something you can wear, something that's tangible. Seriously, like if anyone buying bad JPEGs that they don't even own is interested in art, no, it's just money laundering us just in a new format, like the art world has always been. It's as simple as that. And to, and to make it even more, like if you wanted to argue with someone about this, like when you look at the abbreviation NFT, like non-fungible token, just focus on the word token. It's that. You're buying a token, if that, nothing more. Anyway, I rambled, and again, like I couldn't have done this with the help of a bunch of other people, but I hope that made it a little clearer about not only where I stand on the subject, but what I believe the reality behind that whole Ponzi scheme essentially is. Dude, it's a very small number of rich people conning you into giving them cash and then probably running away with it. Sure, is there an aspect of that world doing some material good for some people? Sure, not going to deny that, but again, as long as we don't address the discussion of ownership, none of the shit actually matters. It's just a scam. And that ties it up for today. Holy shit, we're at 30 plus minutes already. Again, thank you for tuning in. I hope the sound was better than last time, and I hope that this was interesting enough for you to come back. Yeah, see you guys next week, and enjoy the rest of the newsletter. Bye.